Okay, we're live for the latest edition of the Data Value Show. I'm really excited for the next guest we're going to have on, the godfather of data warehouse, Bill Inmon. So without further ado, let's bring him to the show.
Well, thank
Hey,
you,
Bill.
Chris. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, and thank you very much for coming on here and talking about this. And yeah, as I've said in the post, been following your books, your career, and your methodology over many years. Yeah, a pleasure to meet you at Day to Day Texas, and yeah, since then it's been great talking to you about DataVox. But let me go full screen. So yeah, for those that don't know you, do you want to give yourself a little bit more of an intro, who you are, and
Sure.
a brief overview of your career, because I know it's a big one.
My name is Bill Inmon. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I've been in our profession too long. I wrote my first program in 1965, when most of you probably weren't even born yet. And I started as a programmer. Then I was a database designer. Then I got interested in writing and wrote a couple of books. And I did something called Data Warehouse, which I did, 25 years ago. And so it's been a lot of fun. Just for information, I've been to 59 different countries of the world, 58 of them which I was paid to go to. I've only paid in my life to go to one country in my life.
Which is the country you paid for? So we know that must have been worth it.
I paid to go to Tahiti, and Tahiti was wonderful.
Yeah, I suppose you're not going to get too many data conferences in Tahiti, but you never know. You never know. Maybe there'll be one in the future that they can get you to go to.
I have a quick story to tell you. I was invited to a data warehouse conference in Antarctica, and I told them I was busy that day. I have no desire to ever go to Antarctica.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's a StreamYard. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I need to get rid of this. Sorry, someone's telling me I've got the StreamYard comments on here. How do I get rid of that? Oh, yeah. There you go. I'm trying to work out. Exit full screen. Show and then hide. Okay, right. Sorry about that. I had the notes at the bottom, which is the default note. So as I mentioned at the beginning, so you're recognised as the father of data warehousing. That was the first time that data warehouse was defined as a subject-oriented, integrated, time-variant, non-volatile collection of data in support of management decisions and making processes. I didn't do that from memory, but yeah. So that's probably the beginning to start at. So what made you what was the need to actually define this new concept that we all know and live for many years now?
Well, I was a consultant many years ago, and I was working at the time for three companies: Aetna Life and Casualty, Shell Canada, and a company in California that was a cellular telephone company. And the amazing thing was, architecturally, these companies could have laid the plans they had on top of each other, but the companies were very different companies. And so I thought, this is really interesting. Why is there a need for what it was a need for taking transaction data, integrating it, and doing analytical processing? Although we didn't know that at the time, that's what it was. And so these three different companies, the architecture was exactly the same, and so that's what first intrigued me.
So you saw a commonality of the same problem across multiple companies, and no one has solved the problem yet.
Absolutely, and I can tell you where the words data warehouse were first spoken. They were spoken in Edmonton, Canada, at Shell Canada, and the people in the room were a gentleman named Herman Popko, Donna Corrigan, and Gary Warholm and myself. I don't know who first spoke the words data warehouse. I wish I did. It might have been me. It might not have been me. But it was interesting. It was like putting a match to a firecracker. It amazed me that from that simple meeting that we had, how the world has gone.
Yeah, and well, I need to thank you. I wouldn't have a career in this industry if it wasn't for the concept of data warehousing. So, yeah, so I thank you for that, Bill.
Oh, no problem.
So you've well, I've lived a few of these eras. I say a similar thing. I've been in this game too long to admit, but I saw the beginning of the data warehousing era on your Oracle systems or your Netezas and your Teradata. So probably the next evolution from where you started. But we had the big data bubble, and um, we've it promised the world. It probably didn't deliver quite as much as it promised. But what do you think it brought to the data industry? What benefits do you think it provided?
Well, it provided some good things and it provided some bad things. The good things it provided was the ability to expand in terms of volume of data. When data warehouse was first designed, the ability of the manufacturers to accommodate storage was not adequate, and now over the time it increased, and so big data allowed us to expand our vision of having more data than people had ever imagined. That's the good news. The bad news is that the people in big data did not understand that you needed to integrate data, and they didn't understand the basic principles of data warehouse. So all they said was, look, here's this massive amount of data. You don't need a data warehouse now. And that was absolutely incorrect. So big data brought some good things and it brought some bad things.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that annoyed me so much was the lack of data modeling, or the fact is, don't worry, it's scheme on read, we can sort that out later. And I think we're still paying the price for that era of neglecting data modeling. I know our good friend Joe is helping to demystify and unpack what's needed for data modeling in the current times. But yeah, so I think that was another. I agree that it provided that scalability we didn't have. Um, um, Moving on probably to the next era that some say we may be coming out of, but and it was never very well named, the modern data stack, because nothing stays modern forever. So taking that evolution, so what did the modern data stack bring to the table on that evolution?
It too brought some good news and it brought some bad news. The good news it brought was the recognition of the need for the variety of activities that needed to occur. And about that, there's no question. But just like the big data people, everybody ignores integration. Everybody ignores the fact that you don't just put data into some kind of storage. You've got to transform that data
Mm-hmm.
before it becomes useful. So the modern data stack said, well, let's have a lot of different uses and activities, and that was good. The fact that they ignored or didn't know about it, for whatever reason, they didn't understand the need for transformation.
Yeah, and I second that. I think another thing I will add to that is I think people forgot of cost controls and the fact that rather than just throw more compute in it or turn up the dials of your warehouse size just to go and get something to perform, throwing horsepower at the problem, and then that created an issue where it was seemed to be expensive now, whereas everything's expensive if you don't do it properly. I think I use the analogy: if you try and heat your house with your windows and doors open,
Yep.
it's going to be an expensive approach. So I think the FinOps has obviously come a bit more prominent now, but yeah, that lack of focus on writing good quality, optimized code that was efficient, rather than hacking it together and just throwing more compute at the problem.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So we've had this lake house, and I know that another one of your books was on the lake house. So what do you think the lake house has on the next sort of journey that we've been on? What's that brought to the table, and how would that be affected now with Apache Iceberg and Delta format tables, as well, Delta file structures as well? Do you think that's going to bring some other benefits?
In order to answer that question, I kind of have to step back a few steps to give you a right answer. Before there was the lake house, there was something called the data lake. Now, I want to be clear about this. When I speak, there's a difference between a data lake and a data lake house. They sound the same. They are not the same thing at all. So after people began to build data warehouses and have some architecture in their environment, somebody came up with the idea, well, let's build something called a data lake. A data lake, as far as I could tell, is a place where you dump some data and hope somebody can do something with it. And over, the data lake has proven to be a data swamp, a really bad idea. And so, and why? Well, a lot of reasons why. But number one, you can't find anything in the data lake. Number one. Number two, if you do find something, you don't know what it is. And number three, if you find something and know what it is, you can't connect it to any other kind of data. So the poor users out there trying to make sense of this, and nothing good happens. So data lake set the stage for data lake house. And what happened is, in the day of data warehouse, everything was structured data. And by the way, we still have, and we're going to continue to have, structured data. There's nothing wrong with structured data, except that different kinds of data started to appear in the corporation. It wasn't just structured data. There was unstructured data in the corporation. Now, unstructured data takes a lot of different forms. One form it takes is in the form of text. Another form it takes is in the form of analog data. And there are yet other forms of unstructured data in the corporation. And quite frankly, the data warehouse doesn't really, as far as I can tell, address anything except structured data. So here you are, a data architect in a corporation. You've got your data warehouse, but you've got all these other kinds of data. And so you need to accommodate the other kinds of data that are coming in. And there's a lot of reasons why you have to accommodate, or you need to accommodate the other kinds of data. The main reason is there's tremendous business value wrapped up in the kinds of data of textual data and analog data. Now, one of the problems is in both the case of textual data and analog data, the rules are different. That you learn one set of rules in the world of structured data, you go to textual data and the rules are different, and then you go to analog data and you've got another set of rules. And so the lessons that you've learned as a professional all your life suddenly are no longer valid in these other worlds. So as we go from the data warehouse to the data lakehouse, the data lakehouse is nothing more than a data warehouse that accommodates different kinds of data. That's really all it is. But the rules of and we could go on for a week talking about how are the rules different. And let me just give you one example. In the case of analog data, which is data that's generated by a machine, you get a warped view of how the data has value. Let me give you a quick example. If you go on an airline, every airline that I know of has something called a black box. And a black box is nothing more than a collector of analog data. And on a successful airline flight, the black box really means nothing. The on a black box doesn't mean a thing. And every day when a plane lands and people arrive safely, that analog data isn't worth anything. However, come the day when a plane goes down on a crash somewhere, that black box data is worth its weight in gold. And that's just one example of many examples of what I mean by analog data is warped, because the vast majority of analog data doesn't have any real value. However, a few small amounts of analog data have tremendous value. And you need to take that into account when you're dealing with analog data. But and believe me, that is the tip of the iceberg of the differences between managing data in the different environments.
Yeah, that's a great overview. I think the comments I made here was there's a new data cataloging coming out. So there's Snowflake have got one called Polaris, and there's the Unity catalog, I think, with Databricks, and there's other ones coming out as well. But that's now mapping to where that data is. So with your lake house architecture, is there a need to actually now we're going to have data that may be hosted on the platform, maybe hosted externally, maybe analog data? Will there be a need more for a catalog to point to where that relevant data is?
Absolutely. In the case of analog data, it's not even a question of are you going to do it. It's a matter of you're going to do it, and you can't do it any other way. In the case of textual data, it's not quite so clear as to how that's going to map out. But at the end of the day, there's far too much data in the world for a corporation to even begin to think about trying to put it all into a single place.
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. There's a question here from Phil and Philip Yule, which I think is quite relevant. He's asking if you're interested your view of whether you can build a data lake well, perhaps with contracts for data sets being prerequisite to loading, and then then whether the lake house will work if you control the virtual layer in a controlled way and fit the compute bill.
I'm going to answer your question a little bit indirectly, and this may not be a good answer. It may not even.
We're consultants at the end of the day. We're still consultants.
Right. I have yet to find anybody in the world, and I talk to a lot of people. I have yet anybody in the world that's had long-term success with a data lake in any form, I just now, if there's somebody out there that's had a data lake for 2 or 3 years and are making it work, please let me know. I'd love to talk with you. But to date, my experience level has been 0. So if you've built a real data lake, you need to think about unbuilding it.
Great insight, and yeah, thanks for the question, Philip. So yeah, we're getting on to the main event, which is the textual ETL topic that we'll be getting to. And just going through my notes, and I think supporting what you're saying is that data lakes encourage a data hoarding approach, where you're just keeping everything without actually knowing how it's ever going to be used. So yeah, understanding how your data is going to be used and the business context of it, I think was another thing that was missed when with the data lake concept. So the main event, okay, so the new T in ETL. So we've had variants of it: extract, transform, load, extract, load, transform. The push down. We even had reverse ETL, which I always thought that was just a delivery. Never knew why there was a separate product for it. But now with textual ETL and what you've been championing for quite a while. So I suppose the first question is, why has that been so difficult historically, and how do you think that's going to change in the future with what you've been working on?
Well, first off, Chris, you've asked several questions all at once.
True.
Let me quickly go back to the ETL ELT controversy. Just like the big data people, just like everybody else, everybody tries to ignore the transformation integration piece that needs a data model. And ELT is kicking the can down the road. ELT is not a data warehouse. I don't know what it is, but it isn't a data warehouse. And so that's one thing, and I want to be clear about that. So that's one question that you brought up. The second question that you brought up was the one about textual ETL. Textual ETL is a torturous path. I remember years ago, before most of you were born, when I was in graduate school, we were studying something called NLP, natural language processing. And NLP is an academic approach to trying to study languages. And NLP is academic. NLP is complex. NLP requires a lot of consulting help and support to make work. And so when IBM and Oracle and SAP and Microsoft decided they needed to look at text, they said, where are the world's best experts on text? And they looked to universities, typically Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, Harvard, and Yale. And they said, these people understand text because they understand NLP. The truth of the matter is, NLP was never designed to be a commercial product. It was designed for other purposes, and I'm sure it serves their other purposes as well. But it's been around for 50 years, and we really haven't seen much in the way of results. So when we first started out at DataVox years ago, we looked long and seriously at NLP, and we tried to make NLP work in a commercial sense, and was never able to do it. And so we struck out on our own, and there were no books, there were no articles, there were nothing out there to guide us. So we worked by trial and error. That's one reason why it took so long, because did we make errors? Oh, we made errors. The only good news is we learned from our errors. And so what we have developed today is a way to get text into the form of a database, and it's everything that NLP is not. What we are is very simple, very fast, not complex. It doesn't require a consultant, and it's accurate, and it does a wonderful job. And so, however, by doing the trial and error method, it took a long time to get through our mistakes. I remember waking up on many mornings saying, why am I doing this? No one's paying me to do this. Well, it's got to be done. So today, there are some really amazing examples of what can be done with text. Now, I have to warn you and everybody that the world of text is different from the world of structured information. The rules you learned as a structured person are not going to fit into the world of text. And so I just give you a warning that even with textual ETL, which can automate massive amounts of work, you still have to understand you're no longer on Earth, you're on the moon, and you have to operate and live differently on the moon than how you learned to operate on Earth.
There's some great. I mean, I'd like to probably understand a little bit more when you say you'll still need to have some data modeling skills, or be able to relate the textual, the result, or the semantics, or the insight that's come from the text to either a demographics or a clinical trial, or some other more structured data. So you're still going to have to perform that modeling within the platform at some stage.
Again, you've asked 3 or 4 questions in one sentence, and that's real talent. Let me first talk about data modeling. Data modeling is one of the foundations of, and one of the rocks of Gibraltar of the structured world. You need data modeling to understand the landscape, the relationships of data. There are 1,000 reasons why you need data modeling in the structured world. However, you need something similar in the world of text, but it's nevertheless fundamentally different. And what you need in the world of text is something called ontologies and taxonomies. There's a lot of differences between an ontology and a taxonomy and a data model. A data model makes the assumption that data is going to be divided up where every unit of data, like a person's name or social security number or account number, there's identifiable information in every record. That's not so with the world of text. In the world of text and ontologies and taxonomies, you deal with classification of data. So if you go into a forest, you can find there are pine trees, there are oak trees, there are elm trees, and so forth. Those are classifications. What you don't find in the forest is an identification of every tree. And so the ontologies and taxonomies are for the purpose of classification, whereas in the structured world, the data model is good for the identification of every record. And there are a million other differences. Let me give you another major difference between the world of structured world and, bless you, structured world and textual world. And that difference is in terms of the notion of precision versus probabilistic nature. In the world of structured systems, you require that data be precise. If somebody goes into the bank and writes a check for $5, the bank better not mark it down as $4.95 or $5.15. If a check's for $5, it's for $5, no more, no less exact. However, when you go into the world of text, you don't have that level of precision. What you have is a probabilistic match. Let me give you a quick example. Suppose you're reading doctor's notes, and a doctor has the term HA in the note. What does HA mean? Well, if the doctor's a general practitioner, chances are excellent that it means headache. And you can, 98% of the time. However, is there any reason why the general practitioner doctor can't use HA for heart attack? No, there's no, it's language. The general practitioner wants to do that, they can. So most of the time when you see HA, you know what it means. Some of the time you don't know what it means. And it's this let me give you one other quick example of linguistic imprecision. If you've ever looked at the transcription process that comes from voice to text transcription, there is no such thing anywhere on this earth as perfect transcription. That when you do transcription, you are going to have some percentage, hopefully a small percentage, but some percentage of your transcription is not going to be done properly. And again, you want to get as much of it done properly as you can, but there's always a chance that a word has been misunderstood by whoever is doing the transcription. And the world of text is full of this probabilistic nature that is not precise. And the people that are used to precision in the structured world, it drives them crazy. I used to have this friend of mine who was a perfectionist. God love her. I think of her every day. And she was a perfectionist. And she would get in these arguments with me, says, Bill, you don't know what this means. And you're right. I said, you're right. I don't know what it means. I know what it means most of the time. I know how we're going to interpret it. But guess what? I could be wrong. And oh, you can't be wrong. So so anyway, there are many, many differences between the world of structured and textual, and you've got to again, if you're gonna operate and use your textual data, which I greatly encourage you to do, you have to understand you're entering a different domain.
So the thing that's going to tie these two worlds together is the taxonomy ontology that's going to be able to bring these two worlds together of the structured and then the textual data.
Chris, I just got through writing a paper on how do you match and merge and mix structured data and textual data, and I'm going to tell you it's one of the most difficult subjects that you can imagine. Sometimes you can make a match, sometimes you can make a probabilistic match, and sometimes you can't make a match at all. And I'll be happy to share the paper with you.
I'd love to read it. And going back to that, the different two worlds, and it's good enough. I say, is it good enough to make the decision it's going to be used for? And in some cases, the structured data, it's a credit card payment. Am I going to pay this person? Yes or no? It's going to have to be a 100% match. Whereas, you say, is this clinical trial helping with this drug if it's being used? 90% of the cases, that's good enough to go through to the next stage. So it's tracing back the use cases to understand the accuracy level or precision or how close it is to make the decision based on that.
Let me quickly go off into a different world. My wife is a doctor, and she and I have discussions all the time. And she's taught me medicine is not a perfect world. Medicine is a probabilistic world. She says, because for every disease, every condition out there, a doctor can create a treatment, and hopefully it works. But there are some people on some occasion it's not going to work for, and so medicine tries to get it right most of the time. And if you're the patient, hopefully they do. But are they going to get it right 100% of the time with precision? Absolutely not. And text is the same way.
So I'm going to go back to the ETL versus ELT, because there's a few comments came up, and I want to explore your view where you didn't support the ELT approach. So I think I saw a synopsis which came out from it was bought by Oracle. I think it was the first. It became ODI. That was the first time I'd heard the term ELT. And at that point, we started to have these larger appliances where the scaling of the database wasn't the main issue. So products like Informatica or Data Stage or other products where it was traditional ETL. And I love the benefits you used to get from that. There was a data manager, another product from Cognos or IBM, where you used to get the lineage, you put the business rules in one place, it enforced you doing the data modeling, you documented the catalog for it. It created lots of benefits of using the ETL tool, which I agree, when we went ELT, we lost a lot of those. But the drive then was to push down that load to the underlying platform. So do you see now there isn't a need for that? Cloud architecture, you can do the translations traditionally like an ETL tool. Do you think it was a necessary evil, or do you just don't believe in it at all?
I have my own opinion, and my opinion is that the vendors of the world wanted to sell their product, and they knew that transformation was dirty, hard work. They wanted to get it out of the way so they could sell their product. My first introduction to ELT was with Teradata. I'm not sure they invented the term, but that was when I first heard it. But vendors are not interested in your success or your architecture. They're only interested in selling their product. Make no mistake about it. And
Yep.
so vendors said, "Oh my gosh, this thing called ETL. It means before I can sell my E and L product, I've got to do some T, and I don't want to do that T." So they're kicking the can down the road. And
Yep.
recently, a friend of mine was at a Snowflake conference, and somebody asked him and says, "Gee, uh, where do you do the transformation?" And he says, "Oh, we let the organization that bought us do the transformation." Well, that organizations don't do that. Organizations avoid work, not create work, and so that's no answer at all. So all of these organizations that are selling ELT, all they're trying to do is push their product and not look after your architecture.
Yeah, I do agree. That may have been the case that may have been the case for a few of the vendors out there. So, and again, DBT and things, the products like that, they're not very efficient with those transforms when they're doing on the database either. So, I do see that there's maybe a resurgence. Maybe the transformation will start being done outside, especially now the difference of compute engines being able to be used with more of a lakehouse approach. And maybe there's one that the engine can just be part of the application layer that's doing the ETL. Interesting insights there, Bill. So to go back to the T in ETL. So are we going to have a new term now? Is it going to be called TETL, text or extract text ETL now, or are you just going to have keep it textual ETL?
Chris, our profession invents a new term every day, and furthermore, we take old concepts, slap a new name on them, and sell them. So are we going to have new terms? Absolutely, we're going to have new terms for everything. In the case of textual ETL, textual ETL is different from classical ETL in that. It actually does the work for you. Textual ETL still required definitional work, and there's actually a good reason for that. You say, well, how can text do something where the work's already done, and you can't do that in classical ETL? Well, there's a reason for it, and the reason for it is that language is finite. Language is large, very large. At the end of the day, it's finite. For example, suppose I want to express the sentiment that I like something. There are only so many ways I can say I like something. I love it. I like it. I adore it. I want it. And there's only so many ways. Now, admittedly, language is very large, which brings up a quick side setting. How many words do you think there are in the English language? First off, nobody knows, but it's estimated that there are around 660,000 words in the English language. And by the way, how many of those words relate to medicine? And I doubt you know it, but of the 660,000 words in the English language, 600,000 of them relate to medicine.
Wow,
And
largely. Wow, I think that was a surprise actually.
and along that line, how many words does a person ever use in their lifetime? So of normal common speech, sit down and talking with somebody, how many different words do you use in your lifetime? And the answer is it's estimated around 2,500 words. And one other note, and for those of you that are going to think this is a sexist comment, all I can say is this is what I read. How many words does a man use in a day and a woman use in a day? And a man uses 1/3 the number of words that a woman uses. And if that marks me as a sexist, well, just mark me as a sexist, I guess. But I'm interested in words, and there's that. But in terms of common speech, okay. So number one, we got 660,000 words in the English language. In terms of common speech, we only have about 2,500 words that any person will use in their lifetime, and so you can narrow down your list of commonly used words to a reasonable sum. What that means is that once you identify the common words and how they're used, now you can simply read text, pick out the common words, and understand the text. That's why you can create a finite domain of words for text, that you can't do that with the structured world, where there is effectively an infinite number of activities, words, and objects.
I was just trying to think of how many of the swear words are the average that I use a day. So that's probably a larger percentage maybe than others, and sometimes. We've been focusing mainly on medical use cases, and we've mentioned this before when we've chatted. Legal is another area that they use a lot of words as well. I'm pretty sure the average number of words a lawyer would use is probably higher than normal people.
Yep.
And the contracts and law cases, they can be very complex, loads of words in them, but there's going to be certain common similarities between the words they use and how they're used in certain cases. So do you see? I know your answer to this one. Is that an untapped market? Do you think? Loaded question.
First off, the people in law use a different set of words than everybody uses, but it's still a rather small subset. So let me tell you an experience that I've had with legal and contracts and things like that. When we first started doing what we did, we recognized that there's a tremendous amount of value in corporate contracts, and we recognized that that people weren't looking at them, and so I've talked to any number of groups of executives and said, okay, how many people in this room know what's in your corporate contracts? And to date, not one organization has raised their hand. And then I tried to explain to them, look, aren't you in charge of corporate liability? Don't you think there's liability in your corporate contracts? And I for whatever reason, I get this sheepish answer. Well, we got so many contracts, and each contract is different, and you can't do that. And the one classical one I got, Microsoft said we couldn't do that, and I thought, okay, in terms of the world of legal, we've talked to a lot of managers and a lot of lawyers about contracts, and it's like trying to sell caskets. Nobody buys a casket till they're dead. I'm not going to name this one organization, but this one organization is the most highly sued organization in the United States. And we went to them and said, to their legal staff, and said, gee, what if you could anticipate a lawsuit? Isn't it cheaper and better to head off a lawsuit than it is to have to defend it? And the answer I got still blows me away. The guy said, look, Bill, I've got a staff of 600 lawyers. If we start to reduce the lawsuit, I'm going to have to lay off some of these lawyers, and we don't want to do that. And I go, oh, okay.
Yeah, so hopefully, if there's any law firms out there, you can disrupt the market here by getting a head start before anyone else does that as well. And so we've spoken about both of those examples are um, medical records and legal documents are true text. We talked about analog as well, or voice as well. So how is that another untapped market, do you think, as well?
The market for text in all respects is untapped, and text comes in many different forms. It comes in from spreadsheets. It comes in from print. It comes in from voice recordings. It comes in from the internet. It comes in many places. And merely ingesting text is one whole technology. The other technology is taking the text that's been ingested and taking that text and then doing something with it. So there's really two things at play. Number one, ingestion of the text, and number two, processing of the text. Those are two different marketplaces.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a question here from it's probably to both of us, and I've got a view on this as well. In this world of quick turnaround times with background of plethora of cloud tools, does it even make sense for an organization to build an enterprise data warehouse? Do you want to go first, or should I have a stab first?
Sure. If your organization doesn't need enterprise-wide data, then you don't need a data warehouse. Let me answer this question with a little story. In the beginning were all of these application for this and that and the other, and all these applications. And then and the applications were built for the needs of the department. And then one day, accounting, marketing, sales, and finance and management said, gee, I want to look at my data. And they found they couldn't. Why? Because the data had been built for all of these applications. So if you reach a day when accounting, marketing, sales, and finance don't need to look at your corporation, then guess what? You don't need a data warehouse.
Yeah, I think the comment I was going to make on there, I think you're going to need to, if you do have the requirements, and cross-domain reporting requirements where you can't get the information from just one system, you're going to have to put a stake in the ground. I think even if there's a quick turnaround of different cloud vendors and tools, if you build it in a way that you try not to be sticky and architecturally design it, meaning that you can have an easy path to migrate to newer things when there's a need to, then I don't think just because the world's moving too fast that there's no point doing anything at all. But yeah, that's my view on that one. I think you may have your phone ringing, Bill, or an alarm in the background, but
it's not my phone.
No, it's not mine. Okay, well, it's not me either. So I don't know where the beep is coming from. So maybe. But anyway, so yeah, I hope that answers that question, Nicole. So another thing, I'm just making a note there when you're talking about it. So this world of OLT, OLTP, and OLAP, the infrastructure was designed for two different workloads. The data modeling was designed for two different workloads, and that created there was a need to take from the OLTP into an OLAP to do any analytics on it. The concept of HTAP, I'm not sure if we spoke about this when we met in day-to-day Texas, but HTAP, hybrid transaction analytical processing, has been talked about for a while. I haven't seen anyone nail it yet. What's your view on HTAP?
I too have not seen anything on it, and I'm so unfamiliar to me that I would be embarrassing myself if I tried to give a good comment on it.
Okay, no worries. And just from my understanding, it's the ability to have your transactional data and your analytical workload on the same place in the same data, and it managed the table structure changes that are needed for it. But I think everyone's been talking about it, but I haven't seen anyone actually come out with that as a solution. Where I think that could change thing is a lot of movement of data happens because we have these different workload appliances, a different workload. If we could bring those, if we could have an infrastructure that could support both those workloads, it would prevent the amount of movement. Although you're still going to need transformations at some point.
That's right. You can't get away from transformation.
No, yeah. So another one that we talked about just before, and you started to talk about NLP, and that was the beginning of, I suppose, what people would have called AI back then, or machine learning. Now we have generative AI, we have LLMs, we've got small language models. So Aaron actually put a question out ahead of the game. He said, "You want to know what your thoughts were on ChatGPT when it first came out?"
First off, it's cool, it's sexy, it has a lot of money behind it, and it has a lot of money behind it. In terms of its business value, its basic business value, the jury is still out, and the jury is still out. The thing about GPT is, in terms of generating new thought, it's good for repackaging old thought, but in terms of new thought, I'm not sure it has that capability. Number one. Number two, ChatGPT, when it comes, I was talking to an industry analyst from Gartner the other day, and he said, "Gee, Bill, Gartner's vision of ChatGPT is to take all of this unstructured data, textual data, and let ChatGPT operate on it." And I've talked to about 10 different major companies that have tried that. ChatGPT is good for conversation, but in terms of what you would call analytical processing, ChatGPT is not good for that. And so, so it depends on what you want. When ChatGPT came out, I said, and I still maintain, until ChatGPT shows genuine business value, it's just a fancy, expensive toy.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. I think it can help with some things, and I think it's working out where it can help. But I don't know about the associated cost that it's costing in electricity at the moment. It doesn't cost us as much, but I think, as you say, the investments are footing the bill. So there's a hidden cost that we're not actually receiving yet. So, and it actually leads on to a question I think from Brandon here, and I know the answer is because I know how your product works, but and I think this would probably be a lot of people's default assumption of what textual ETL is. It's just some LLMs, reading the text there, and I know that's not the case. So, how would you answer that?
First off, Textual ETL does not use LLMs. Textual ETL uses their own version of what's needed in text, but it's definitely not an LLM. And I can give you a lot of reasons why LLM for a general purpose product is not a very good match. So Textual ETL, and it does a lot more than orchestration of text and data. I'll be more than happy to show you if you want to get hold of me, and I can explain what I mean, but we don't do LLMs at DataVox.
Yeah, I knew the answer, but I didn't want to steal your thunder there, Bill.
Yep.
And moving on to that is right, small language models. So do you see them being more beneficial than these catch-all approaches for LLMs?
Okay, I'm going to have to answer this question with a long answer. When we started a long time ago down our path of making a commercial product to manage text, we started with the notion of an LLM. It's taken us 20 years to go through an evolution. We started with an LLM. We went to a small model, and then we went to what we call a focused model. and now we go to a minimalist model. And so what you're seeing in the marketplace today is an evolution of the path that we walked down 20 years ago. And you're going to find LLMs are not what you want. SLMs are an improvement of LLMs, but they're not what you want. You want focused LMs, and then you want a language model that's a minimal focused language model. That's what you want. But it took us 20 years of evolution to find that out. And I don't know how long our profession is going to take to find it out. At the rate that academia moves, our grandchildren may be figuring it out at that time.
That's good insight there. There's a couple of more questions here. We've got about 5 more minutes left, and there's another one from Philip Yule. How do you speed up the modeling process as the tools move data far out of space? The ability to define and deliver a model to put that data in. So the age-old problem.
We have our own techniques, which are proprietary, which I really would not want to discuss right now.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I think there's one more I'll put up here, and then we can start to summarize the talk today. So, do you have any thoughts on repatriation of an enterprise data warehouse, so migrating from cloud vendor A to cloud vendor B, or back to on-premise again?
You can run a data warehouse successfully on a cloud. You can run it successfully on any cloud vendor, and you can run it successfully on-prem. So in terms of it's your choice. Some people have no choice. People in medicine and military have to run it on-prem. But no, I don't. It's a giant ping pong match, and whatever vendor has the loudest marketing and the most number of salesmen is probably going to win. But in terms of a technical reason for it, you can be successful or you can be unsuccessful in all of those environments.
Yeah, I think there's always got to be a reason for moving, and I think just to move from one cloud to another without getting any additional benefits, or even move it back on premise, there has to be a driver for it, and I don't think weighing up the effort and cost to do it, there needs to be significant upside for taking on something like that. So that's my view on that. Bill, I think we're approaching the hour anyway, and it's been a great insight into the evolution of the data warehouse into its different forms, and the latest work you've been focused on with the Textual ETL, and I'm sure it is going to be a success, and everyone will. You'll be able to go, I told you so soon, Bill. So for people that people want to get a hold of you, I know you're active on LinkedIn still. Is that the best way to get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is as good as any. I'm on email, LinkedIn, and or I'm on the telephone, or you can come visit me at my house.
Well, I may take you up on that one time. If I'm in Denver, I might come and visit and say hello. But an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Loved the conversation, loved your insight, love your views. I love the no hold bar. Say how it is, and that's something that the industry definitely needs more of. So, thank you very much for your time, Bill, and thank you for everything you've done in the over your career of the data world. We've all benefited from it.
My pleasure, Chris.
All right. Well, for the audience, I have the next week's guest already scheduled. Zombie Data Teams. An interesting title that I think Veronica has been talking to Solly about. So find out more in the coming days of what we'll be talking about next week. So that should be exciting. And again, thank you, Bill, for your time. And we'll probably call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone.